Sir?
Skin cancer.
Oh, he had his skin cancer removed before, but he hasn't, he's still here, so that's good. And before we go much further, we welcome all those that are viewing online as well to our program tonight, and we're going to begin with prayer. Jesus, thank you that we can be here. Thank you for all the foods that you have created for our benefit, not only for our enjoyment in our mouth, but also for our bodies to help us be stronger and healthier. And I pray that you'll give us a heart and a mind to hear and understand what we learn tonight. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
I have two little shows tonight. One, foods that decrease cancer risk. Another one, foods that increase cancer risk. This should sell you on the vegetarian diet. Now, I made this one all myself. Did all this organizing it. Foods that decrease cancer risk, you see a lot of them here. Tomatoes, kidney beans, small fruits, the cruciferous vegetables, the broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, that group. So, high consumers of fruits and vegetables, that is the top 25% who uses the most, that 25%, compared to those at the bottom use of fruits and vegetables, have half the risk of getting cancer. Only half the risk. You cut your cancer risk in half if you're in the top quarter of fruits and vegetable consumption. Okay? The official recommendations are eat 400 grams of fruits and vegetables every day. Choose most of the foods you eat from plant sources. This is the Cancer Society's national recommendation, worldwide recommendation. Choose most of the foods you eat from plant sources. Include fruits and vegetables in every meal. Include grain products in every meal. Choose whole grains in preference to processed refined grain. Choose beans as an alternative to meat. This is world. This is not Seventh-day Adventist Church. This is the world. Scientifically saying that, okay? Now, cruciferous vegetables. We should eat regularly every week. Now, you can tell these studies were done in the U.S. where they didn't use that much fruits and vegetables. Overseas, vegetables, Russia, cruciferous vegetables, cabbage, every day. Non-smoking women and lung cancer. Non-smoking women who are at the highest quartile, that's top quarter, of vegetable intake versus lowest, have an odds ratio of getting lung cancer of only 20%. And that applies to smokers and non-smokers. The relative risk of colon cancer with less than 120 grams of fruits or vegetables a day versus greater than 200 grams is 1.65. In other words, you have colon cancer risk is 65% higher if you're not eating that much fruits and vegetables. What about breast cancer? I'm excited about the breast cancer thing because we haven't done very well at lowering our breast cancer. Intake of carrots or spinach more than 2 times a week compared to none had a relative breast cancer risk of almost 1.5. Carrots and spinach cuts down on breast cancer risk. A case-control study of 46 breast cancer cases showed an inverse relationship between breast adipose concentration of retinoids and carotenoids and breast cancer risk. The risk ratio of upper half to lower half was for beta carotene 30%. Only 30% as much. For lycopene, 32%. Eating greater than 1 slice of onion every day reduced breast cancer risk to almost 1/4. You like onions? I think that's pretty interesting. Now, I know how we can really reduce breast cancer to 1/2. Easy. Every woman should have 10 children and nurse them all. And if they did that, we would cut our breast cancer in half. It's important to nurse the kids, okay? Nobody likes this suggestion. Pancreatic cancer. 4th leading cause of cancer death in men and 5th for women. A study of 2,333 adults, including 533 pancreatic cancer patients, showed those who ate more than 400 grams a day of fruits and vegetables had only half the risk versus 160 grams per day. Advertisement for vegetarian diet. The evidence is so strong, and you don't have to take one study or this study or that study. All those studies say the same thing. Cruciferous vegetables. This includes broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage. Those who ate cabbage 1 time per week compared to once a month had only 1/3 the risk of getting colon cancer. The indoles increase the production of benzopyrinases, which inactivate benzopyrene. If you're growing food next to the freeway, you'll get more benzopyrene in your diet. That's a carcinogenic substance, okay? Green salads. In the Loma Linda Health Study, those using green salads daily compared to once a week or less had only 70% of the overall death rate. Cuts it down, 30%. By the way, when I was in China, I didn't eat much of these fresh greens. You know why? Always going with human fertilizer. That's the way to get amoebic dysentery and die. Okay? So I came to the U.S. and I saw this study. I began to use some. We should eat at least 2 servings of fruits a day. Those who ate 160 grams of fruit a day compared to less than 240 grams had only 26% as much lung cancer risk. This is for smokers and non-smokers. Eating fruit 240 grams or more per week reduced risk of lung cancer by 2/3 versus rarely eating fruits. This fact remains the same whether the person has ever smoked or not. Those who use fruits more than 160 grams per day had less than 1/3 the usual stomach cancer risk. Actually, our country has one of the lowest stomach cancer rates in the world. That has to do with refrigeration. That has to do, we put our foods in a refrigerator so you don't get so much of the cancer stuff. Those who use fruits 4 times a week had only 63% the risk of prostate cancer. Fruits decrease the risk of prostate cancer, particularly tomatoes. Eat foods that are high in vitamin A and those high in vitamin C on a regular basis. Can you think of many foods that have both vitamin A and vitamin C? we think of the cantaloupe. But there aren't many like this. You know, I wonder what about persimmon. I'm trying to think of how many others we could find. But a food that has both vitamin A and C is excellent in reducing cancer risk. Overall mortality rate, including cancer, is lower in those who are high consumers of foods high in vitamin A and C. Those over 65 years of age who were high consumers of foods high in these two vitamins had only 30% of the mortality as those who were low consumers. You do decrease your chance of dying by 70% if you eat more of those cantaloupes. Now that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I wish they wouldn't serve them to you so in such an unripe state so often. Can't I take a vitamin supplement instead? Risks of lung cancer were increased in Finnish and American trials where smokers were provided with high-dose beta-carotene supplement. It increased their chance of getting it and dying if they ate those supplements. So that's why the Cancer Society today said, we don't want you to try to take these multiple vitamin supplements to reduce cancer risk, because they're doing something that we didn't expect to happen. In another study, those receiving beta-carotene had a 23% higher incidence of prostate cancer, and mortality was 15% higher. We expect that beta-carotene to be so good that it's going to decrease these things, and it didn't. It increased them. That's why the Cancer Society says today, don't take these multiple vitamin supplements. Think it's going to help you. A study showed no relation between premenopausal breast cancer risk and supplements of vitamin C, E, or folic acid. A strong inverse association between total vegetable intake and risk was observed. Food is preferable to supplement. Using the beta-carotene in food seems to do some good, and a supplement it didn't. A study followed persons over 8 years and showed those in the initial highest quartile of plasma beta-carotene had a lower risk of overall death, only half as much. And death from cardiovascular disease was about 60% as much compared to the lowest quartile. However, those randomly given beta-carotene supplementation showed no reduction in death rate from all causes or from cardiovascular disease. If your blood levels are good from the food you're eating, that's great. But to take a supplement doesn't work. Eat tomatoes. A 6-year prospective study done at Loma Linda University of greater than 47,000 men showed the relative risk of advanced prostate cancer to be about half for those who consumed lycopene 10 times a week compared to 1.5 times a week. 82% of it was in tomato sauce, tomato juice, and pizza. That's where they were getting their lycopene. Lycopene is a chemical that makes it red. That's what makes the tomato red, lycopene, okay? Tomato users have lower pancreatic cancer risk. Serum from greater than 25,000 volunteers were frozen and later analyzed. There were later 437 cancer cases and 765 matched controls. Low levels of lycopene were strongly associated with pancreatic cancer. Tomatoes decreases cancer of the prostate. Tomato paste provides 2.5 times more lycopene than raw tomatoes. Got to eat more pizza. It's quite interesting how they're distinguishing between a supplement and the stuff in the food itself. Eat a lot of beans. The consumption of beans may reduce the risk of colon cancer by 1/3 in the general population. Now we're talking not about vegetarian. It won't reduce vegetarians' risk at all, because theirs is already low. Eating meat 1 time per week, 80 grams, increases colon cancer risk by 2.5-fold for those not, compared to those not eating legumes. If one eats beans 3 times a week, the risk is decreased 67%. If you eat meat, but you're eating beans 3 times a week, you will decrease your chance of colon cancer 67%. It doesn't help vegetarian, because they're already at low risk. If eaten daily, the risk is at the low risk of a vegetarian. Same. A person who eats meat once a week, if he eats beans every day, he will have no higher risk of colon cancer than the vegetarian does. That's something. That's really something. Beans don't lower the risk in vegetarians because they're already at low risk. Those who consume peas, lentils, and beans more than 3 times a week have a 50% reduction in prostate cancer risk. Prostate cancer tissue treated with testosterone to stimulate cell division was inhibited by 50% when genistein, a phytochemical common to soybeans, was added to the tissue. I have more information on soybeans, how good they are. They're lowering cancer risk and heart attack risk, diabetes risk. But you have to get more than most people eat. You get one of those little boxes, you need to eat about 1/4 of it a day. We're getting it just sliced up a little bit, like the Oriental might do. But we need to eat more to get the benefit from it. Use whole grains. Doesn't help a lot, but helps some, maybe 10%. Whole grain use reduces the risk of many cancers. The risk ratio for breast cancer is 0.86. You've lowered it 14%. Prostate cancer, 90. You've lowered only 10%. And pancreas, stomach, and colon cancers down to between 50 to 80%. Fiber appears to reduce risk of colon cancer according to meta-analysis of the studies done. Consumption of vegetable fiber was associated with a decreased risk of ovary cancer, odds ratio 0.63% for each 10 grams per day. So it decreased ovary cancer risk. Phytochemicals and lung cancer risk. Highest versus lowest quintile of fruit and vegetable consumers of male smokers had a risk ratio for lung cancer of 25% lower. For lycopene, only 28%, 70% lower. Lutein-xanthine ratio, a lot lower. Beta-cryptoxanthine, a lot lower. Total carotenoids, a lot lower. Serum beta-carotene, a lot lower. Serum retinol, a lot lower. So these phytochemicals in the fruits and vegetables are really worthwhile. Vegetable intake was inversely related to ovary cancer, but leafy greens did the best, with a decrease in risk of more than half for the highest to lowest quintile, divided into fifths. Well, so much for that one. Now, let's go to the other one, if I can find it. The ones that increase. Let's see if I can find it. That's the wrong one.
Just while he's finding that, there's a phrase that he said at many other meetings, so it's easier for me to remember. And it's the whiter the bread, the quicker you're dead. The whiter the bread, the quicker you're dead. So, you know, he said last night about Wonder Bread, and I've seen him do a children's story where he just squishes it. It says, Wonder Bread, you wonder where it went. You can squish it down to about one slice, seriously. Take the whole loaf, you can do that. But a good whole meal loaf of, you know, whole grain, you can't do that. You can compact it, but not down to one slice. You actually got some substance there, and it's the fiber in it that's really healthy for you. So it's good to try to do whole grains, whole breads. It's not that big of a change to buy whole grain bread versus white bread. You pay a little more, but it's also a lot more filling. Yeah, I think it's very worthwhile to do that. Anyway, I'm up at...
Say something.
Yeah, yeah.
I've noticed that the breads lately that you buy, you can keep them and keep them and keep them. They do not mold anymore.
Yeah, they have so many preservatives in them, they have a long shelf life. But a good loaf of bread, it won't, you leave it on the shelf, in a few days it'll start to...
I don't know where you can find it good anymore around here.
Now, here's the slideshow on the foods that increase cancer risk. I have listed a lot of the common factors that we think increase cancer risk. That gives you what it is.
Okay.
This is steak. Okay. Chemicals in food are something that can increase the cancer risk. A high-fat diet can do it, fat in the food. A lack of fiber can do it. You can have cancer viruses in some of these foods. Foods which lower body's resistance to disease, another possibility. Foods which change hormonal balance. Foods which result in early maturation of the food might cause the problem. So, the animal fat factor. Oftentimes a country which has a high incidence of a specific cancer, such as colon cancer, there is also a high incidence of cancer of the ovary, prostate, breast, and endometrium. Appears to be a common factor. Animal fat is the suspicious factor. Now, the top man on nutrition in this country, I would say, is the man at Harvard. He's pretty good. And he says there's 4 different kinds of factors. But we're now down to the stage where we think the biggest thing is energy. In other words, obesity is what's going to increase the risk. Meat contains almost all the dietary factors which increase cancer risk. Breast cancer worldwide correlates with animal fat consumption. Eating meat once a week increases colon cancer risk by 2.5-fold. My wife had a blood cancer. There was nothing to treat it with. It didn't cause her any problem. She had it the last 10 years of her life. She went to see a doctor every year. We were in the waiting room, we'd read their literature on cancer risk reduction and all this. It didn't say anything about alcohol. We know alcohol is a factor in breast cancer. We know it. It didn't say anything about it. So I went into the doctor, cancer specialist, with my wife, and I say, why doesn't it say something about alcohol? They said, this is a political problem. And that's true. We know it has to do with cancer of the breast. and yet it wasn't even mentioned. Prostate cancer is 3.6 times higher in those who are high consumers of meat, milk, eggs, and cheese. Ovary cancer risk increased by use of meat. Meat increases risk of lymphoma, another cancer. In a study of over 20,000 participants, red meats correlated with lung cancer. In this nationally representative study, intake of red meats was positively associated with lung cancer mortality, while intake of dairy products was inversely associated. Now, there's going to be some argument about some of this. Dietary heme. Heme is iron. Dietary iron. Iron from the blood in the meat leads to the formation of a highly toxic factor in the colonic lumen that increases colonic epithelial proliferation, which increases the risk of cancer. It is suggested that it is the heme in the meat which is causing the colon cancer. The heme in the meat causes not only colon cancer, but increases diabetes type 2 risk, increases the heart attack risk. So where do you get the heme in the meat? It's from the meat, heme. Meat that has blood in it. No wonder the Bible says, don't eat the blood or the fat of the meat. The blood increases the risk of type 2 diabetes, the risk of colon cancer, and the risk of heart attack. It's that heme iron. Now, when you are anemic, doctor frequently gives you a diet with meat. Mistake. It's increasing these other diseases. It's a mistake. They shouldn't do that. They should let you recover more slowly by giving you iron from natural foods rather than from meat. In a large study of 300,000 Japanese, it was noted meat users had 2.5 times greater risk of pancreatic cancer. Now look at this, how not to broil steak. A kilogram of charcoal broiled steak produces as much benzopyrene as in the smoke of 600 cigarettes. Public health officials advise against charcoal broiling. Okay? You're making lots of benzopyrene. Well-done meat increased breast cancer in women of a specific genetic type 8-fold. Another study showed it increased the risk 4.6 times. The heterocyclic amines are formed at high temperature. Chinese women who smoke have more lung cancer than men who smoke. It is thought this may be due to the women inhaling fumes containing heterocyclic amines from cooking meat. Cooking meat, the fumes come up with these fumes in them. They think that's what's increasing their risk of lung cancer. Meat use correlates with obesity risk. Meat users had 2 to 2.5 times greater risk of obesity. And of course, obesity increases the risk of a number of cancers. By the way, exercise increases the risk of 13 different kinds of cancers. Women who jog have less cancers. They've done so many studies now showing how exercise decreased the risk of many cancers. More than 3 servings per week of fish, poultry, or beef may double the risk of bladder cancer, regardless of whether the subject previously smoked. White meat, fish and poultry, increase the risk of colon cancer as much as red meat. That's something new that Gary Fraser found out. from his study. Fish has been recommended to prevent heart disease. Eskimos have 34 to 50% higher risk of hemorrhagic stroke, probably due to high fish diet with its high EPA. Ashero's large study showed no fish advantage in heart disease, but showed increased risk of coronary bypass grafting in the two groups with the highest fish intake. Fish we used to say was really good. Now we don't think so. William Connor, I was with him up in Oregon, or in Canada, and we were giving lectures at the same university, and we were on the same taxi going back to the airport, on the airport to the airport, and I said to Dr. Connor, he's a specialist in salmon. I said, Dr. Connor, what do you do with the salmon that have cancer in them and have worms in them? What do you do with the worms? I didn't really get an answer before we left. Dr. William Connor notes that fish does not prevent atherosclerosis, but rather reduces its progress. You can drink the polluted Great Lakes waters over a lifetime and not get as much chemical contamination as you would get from eating one fish meal. Some studies show more cardiovascular disease in fish eaters. So don't let people tell you that fish is safe. It isn't. Okay? Eggs. Ovary cancer is increased in a dose-response relationship to egg consumption. The odds ratio of ovary cancer is 1.42% higher for each 100 milligrams of egg cholesterol per day. One egg gives you about 200 milligrams of cholesterol, so you double that. There was a doubling of ovary cancer risk in the group consuming 2 to 4 eggs a week. Eggs, the egg yolk, seems to be what does it. The use of eggs showed a positive dose-response relationship with fatal colon cancer in both males and females. Users of eggs 5 or more days a week had a 1.7 times the risk versus less than 2 days per week. A study of 142,000 Japanese women showed 2.8 times greater risk of breast cancer in daily egg users versus those who rarely used eggs. So we have to be careful of eggs. Too many eggs. It's the yolk. My son has been taught well with me. I've been eating with him now since his wife died. I live at his house that I turned the property over to him that I had. Anyhow, yeah, he always eats only the white of the egg. He never eats the yolk. Butter and cheese. Harayama's study of 142,000 Japanese women showed high consumers of butter and cheese had 2 to 3 times higher risk of breast cancer. A high saturated fat diet increased lung cancer risk in non-smoking women 6-fold when comparing the highest versus the lowest quintile. Butter and cheese are high saturated fat foods. Now, the American Heart Association for years has been saying we should not use butter. Ellen White told us, Adventists, we shouldn't use butter. Okay? Harayama was a great man in charge of their Department of Prevention of Disease. I was in his office one day, and he showed me some data he had. And these women who ate the most butter and cheese and all that kind of thing were coming down later in life with cancers. He said, what's going on here? I said, I'm a nutritionist, so I'll explain it to you. And I explained it to him. These people are eating more like Americans. They're city kids that are eating this way in Japan. And if they get a lot of the saturated fat, they're going to get these cancers. And that's what was going on. Attributable colon cancer risk suggests saturated fat intake of greater than 10 grams a day, particularly in combination with physical inactivity, could account for 60% in men, 40% in women of the incidence in Chinese Americans of these cancers. Butter and cheese are high saturated fat foods. What about milk? Milk should be pasteurized. We gave unpasteurized milk to monkeys. They got leukemia from the milk. Raw milk from cows with leukemia was fed to 6 chimpanzees and 2 died at 9 months of age due to leukemia. Milk users have lower risk of cancers of the stomach, esophagus, colon, rectum, and bladder. Okay? But we're having a little problem with this. Has to do with our colon cancer. Cytotoxicity of the aqueous portion of human stool is a risk marker for colon cancer. When shifting from a milk-rich to a milk-poor diet, the cytotoxicity assay showed a significant decrease in cell survival. Besides the calcium factor in milk, this may explain why milk seems to reduce the risk of colon cancer. People who are total vegetarians, who don't use any milk, have more large bowel, colon, rectal cancers. They need to have what's in the milk, calcium. Studies have shown there is no significant association of dairy foods with cancer of the breast and most other sites studied: colon, prostate, endometrium, lung, ovary, cancers, pancreas, bladder. For prostate cancer, there is a weak positive association between milk intake and the incidence of prostate cancer. It's the calcium, they think, that's causing the problem. Calcium in the milk that's increasing the risk of prostate cancer. Milk is associated with increased risk of serous type of ovarian cancer, but not other types. Avoid meat, even white meats, fish and poultry. Avoid eggs, especially the yolk, unless living in a country where this is the only source of vitamin B12. The evidence against butter and cheese as a cancer risk is a weak one, but due to its cholesterol and saturated fat, the evidence from the heart attack standpoint is much stronger. The overall evidence from the cancer standpoint favors the use of milk as it is preventive for many cancers, but there is a weak relationship to increasing the risk of prostate cancer. The things that cause cancer, the evidence is not as strong as the things that decrease cancer risk. The first slideshow I showed you, foods that reduce cancer risk, the evidence is much stronger than these slides here showing the foods that increase cancer risk. Okay? Any questions you have? I'm excited about what we know, the possibilities of what we know. We know why vegetarians are living so much longer than other people. They don't have all these chronic diseases. They don't have them. For example, in the general population in Southern California, the average man will live, 19.5% of them will live to 85 or over. But for the Adventist vegetarians, it's 48.6% live 85 or over. Women live longer than the men. So about So they do a lot better than the men. But still, the Adventist women beat out the women in the general population. 60.1% of the Adventist women live to be 85 or older. The other people, 35%. So the vegetarian people live longer because they don't have the chronic diseases. It's very exciting. And the last day of the week, I will be giving you a handout with all kinds of data like this, which shows you the vegetarian diet is the way to go. It's so strong scientifically. It's not a fad thing. It's something that we know scientifically. And we need to tell people about it because it's true. All right.
Okay. Thank you. I hope that was helpful. Did you learn a few things? I think the kind of the summary there was focus on eating the things you should eat to be benefit to you. And the truth is, if you fill up on beans and cabbage and cauliflower and fruits and the good things, whole grains, you don't have room for the other stuff anyway. And you're then doing, two things. But I think rather than focus on, I can't eat that, the moment you start thinking like that, you're like, you start to crave it. But if you focus on the good stuff, good lentil soup or a good, fruit salad or a good vegetable garden salad, whatever it is, and you fill yourself with that good stuff, then you're satisfied and you're helping your risk of cancer, you're helping your longevity, you're helping a lot of things. So it's a win-win-win all around. So I hope that was helpful, and it's nice to see that, Adventist Church has been teaching vegetarianism, but we have all of these, literally hundreds of big studies around the world, and they all saying the same thing. The meat industry doesn't want the people to know these studies.
It's really very hard to persuade people. They think it's a religious thing. It's not. It's scientific.
Right. So that's why the message we have is not, we want you to become an Adventist, we want you to become a better Adventist. It has to do with your health. We want people to live longer, be healthier. This is the way to do it. It's not I think it's kind of, you're not trying to twist people's arm or make them be something, but if we love people, we want them to have longer, healthier lives. So,
I have lived longer than my two brothers. I lived much longer than my dad and my mom. My mom died when she was about late 60s from Alzheimer's. My dad died with a heart attack after several others when he was 76. And here I am, 102 in December. And my brothers, I've outlived them already 16 to 19 years. The two brothers, they're older, they've passed away. Every year it's increasing, the number of years I've outlived them. And why? We're all vegetarians, so the diet is not the main thing with us. But I think the main thing is exercise. I gave up my job teaching at Loma Linda, decided to find the best place to live, and I did. Northward, exactly the center of California, geographically, east, west, north, south, about 40 minutes drive to Fresno. And I've done fine up there. We're just above the snow line. 10 minutes below us, there's no snow. But we get snow. We get fires. We get shooed out of there because of fire. But my daughter-in-law, she put metal on the siding of the house. It's metal. And she made the porch unburnable. Big things that big, flaming, fell on the porch. Didn't start a fire. Because she fixed the house up right. She passed away in February. But she fixed that house up, so We don't get fires. We get chased out of the area for a while, but we don't. Our house doesn't get fire. Fire was on the property.
So I don't know, I have pictures of that property. I've been on that property many times. It's 26 acres up in the mountains, and it was just all forest. So he wanted to build there. So he cleared the driveway himself. He cleared 2 acre. He cleared a spot for his house. He cleared acres for an orchard, and he put in rows of berries. He heard lots of strawberries, asparagus. One summer, my sister and I went and lived with my grandparents there.
Everybody came to see our garden.
It was a huge garden.
Planted 3,000 strawberries one year.
You know,
They
but
didn't
felling-
realize what we do with them, but everybody likes strawberries. It's the best way to make friends there is. So we gave strawberries away.
But he did a lot of exercise. You know, that's a lot of work. He terraced.
And
you know,
it's
where the orchard is, he
not my
terraced.
wife that did it. It was me that did it. I'm the one who did all the work. I wish the sun would stay up longer. We had one real old man came to help me, volunteered to help me work building the house. This old man, he was 75 years of age. Imagine, 75 years old man. He said, you know, I have a thumping in my abdomen. I said, you lay down right down. He laid down on the floor. I felt an aneurysm bobbing up and down. This is going to kill you. You got to go see a doctor today. You aren't working here today. And I got him to see a doctor. Saved his life for 10 years. He saw a doctor and got it taken care of. But he had an aneurysm. I put up the one whole wall myself. So I learned to bend the nails with my hammer too, like everybody else does. But so I worked hard. We left Loma Linda, it was Smoggy. We got up above the smog level. We got one of the best areas in the country and lived there. And we still have that home there. So I'm living there now with my son. His wife passed away in February, so it's just the two of us in the house.
All right. Well, thank you for coming. Tomorrow night is
Worldwide Nutrition Guidelines.
Worldwide Nutrition Guidelines tomorrow night. You're hearing a lot of the recurring themes here, consistency in what's being taught. So thank you all for coming out tonight, and hope to see you back tomorrow night. God bless you all. Enjoy your evening.